If I was to ring your friend and ask them who you're the go-to person for, what do you always bring up in conversation? What are you known for? What would they ring you for advice on? What would they say? Oh, he's always talking about this. There'll be a common theme there if I ask all your friends that question. If I said, if you don't need money, if I gave you 10 million or 100 million on Monday, what would be the first thing you would do? And there'd be a close correlation there. Simply going through your camera roll on your phone over all the years, there'll be a common theme of what you choose to take photos of, what inspires you. It might be football, it might be mountains, animals, but there'll be a common theme there. And if you can start piecing together those clues, you can start to formalize what you're here to do. I grew up in a council estate, single parent, and when I grew up, there was kind of no aspirational peers around me, I guess. And with my dad had left before I was born. My mum was kind of working jobs to make ends meet, and my earliest memories were kind of the electricity running out and bailiffs knocking on the door to pay the bills, and I guess even when she was trying to make ends meet and getting these various jobs elsewhere, I was looked at like my babysitter was like this guy called Joey Pyle, who was him and his wife, and he's like one of the most renowned gangsters in the underground of London. And I would spend my day in this house at 4 years old, 3 years old, just like with people coming and going and smashing plates and angry people. And I guess my earliest memories were just, it created this massive perceived void of like security. I had no security, lack of security. And when I became when I got older, there was a time when I was 13 years old. So when I was 13, we lived on this estate called Hatfield Mead. And every Friday, kind of all the mothers meeting at the bottom of the steps of our block, and they used to moan about them. There was like a general negative view on money, rich people, bosses, things like that. It was kind of like that. And the reason I picked up on that is because every 7:30, this guy called Roy used to come down, and he used to take everyone's money and go and do a syndicate lottery. And then for the next 10 minutes, everyone's face would light up about how amazing their life would be if they won the money. And I just remember thinking, you've just been moaning about money. Is it bad or is it good or is it evil? Because I didn't know what money was really. And I picked up on that. And then that year, coincidentally, I wanted this BMX bike for my 14th birthday. And my mum and my stepdad, they said, "Oh, we can't afford it. If you raise half the money, we'll give you the other half towards it." And I was like, "Yeah, that's a deal." I didn't know how to make money, but we had these greens, around the blocks where people would park their cars around, and I thought I'll wash some cars. So I spent all day washing this car, got paid, and then that night, my friend said, "I'll give you help tomorrow." And I gave everything I'd earned that day to my stepdad to go to the shop and get another bucket and a sponge. And then the next day, we washed 4 cars. And then within 4 weeks, I had 4 friends washing up to 16 cars in a day. And I wasn't doing any of the washing. I was just knocking on the doors and booking in the next wash and collecting the money. And I thought, this is amazing. It felt like I'd discovered fire, because I thought, if you use money like this, you still get what you want, but you do less of the things that you don't like, and and it's great. It's amazing. And you can do more of the things that you do enjoy. So I thought, this must be why they're unhappy with money. They can't be using it the right way. And I really had that light bulb moment at like 14 years old, and it just stuck with me. But ultimately, I've had this, they say that your values are shaped by the time you're 7, and whatever you perceive to be missing most in your childhood, you value most as an adult. And for me, that was security. So whether it was money or not money, I just wanted security. So naturally, I've been guided into life by navigating my way through what can provide me the most security. And obviously money is a big part of that. So I took that, and I took the lessons from the car wash, and I took the lessons from the people around the estate, and I took that into the world. And I guess from then on, I just become fascinated with how I could use money to do more of the things that I love, but still get what I want, and delegate and automate all the things that aren't inspiring to me, and then make every penny kind of give me more security. And that's kind of where I am today. And I still do that today. So in a nutshell, that was kind of what shaped where I am today, I guess.
And how did you first become aware of investing and step into that world? What did that look like?
Yeah. So when I was in school, when I was doing my around GCSE time, this teacher, Mr. Shilato, he stood me up after we did these SATs or whatever it was, these kind of mock exams, and I thought I'd done really well, and he basically showed me up in the middle of it. He made us stand up and he said, "Look, you need to buck your ideas up, basically." And it was like one of those really embarrassing moments where I wanted the world to just swallow me up. Um, but I went to the library and we were just in on the cusp of when like Microsoft came out. So we had Word and Excel in our library in school. And I just thought, I'm going to go there every lunchtime and kind of learn and get my act together. And anyway, I gravitated towards Excel and putting numbers into Excel and projections and charts and graphs. I played around with it, and then I became fascinated with Excel from what I learned in the lunchtime spent in there at school. And then when I left school, Microsoft Money came out, and it was basically like a glamorized version of a spreadsheet with charts and nice things, and you could put your income into it and stuff. And I did that. And because I had this drive to become financially independent, that was in me. Like it was innate. It was like something I wanted from a child, because I didn't want to have kids and then bring them into a world where they had what I had growing up and all this kind of stuff. Um, so I kept talking about this idea of becoming financially independent, and I became fascinated that I could replace my actual income at my job if I saved X amount of money for X amount of years, X amount return, and basically just became obsessed with this kind of journey of income replacement through various components, like increasing my savings, increasing my returns, controlling my lifestyle costs and all this kind of stuff. And I was doing that, and until when I was 22, we found out I was going to have a baby, and it just put a rocket up my backside. It was like my life flashed before my eyes. I was like, oh, I've failed. I've failed as a dad. I'm nowhere near ready to where I wanted to be. He's going to have a terrible, not a terrible upbringing, but he's not going to have the security that I wanted him to have, and I'm just doing what
Are you
I had.
working at this point, or?
Yeah. I was working out of school. I was
Right.
electrician. I trained as an electrician, trying to become a fire brigade fireman on the side, and I was too young to be a fireman, so I trained as an electrician until I could get into the fire brigade. So switched on with money, and then when my son came along, I was like, right, how can I really accelerate this thing? So I started with savings, then I started accelerating my savings, then I started with index funds and ETFs, and then I went into stocks, and I've done everything, real estate investment trusts, small cap, medium cap stocks, then into trading, so the whole shebang.
And could you give us a little bit of a breakdown? So you mentioned some terms there. Like, we talk about finances a little bit on this podcast, but most people, I'd imagine, is fairly novices when it comes to what is an ETF, etc.
Yeah. So basically the stock market, right? So I started looking at saving my money, right? And then the thing with saving your money, first thing I heard was save 10% of your income, right? So I started doing that, and then I did the math really quickly, and I thought, well, if I save 10% of my income, after 10 years, I'll have 1 year's income. And then if I do it for 40 years in my whole life, I'll have 4 years income saved. And I thought, well, that's not a whole strategy. That's a partial strategy, because I heard people promoting that and no one was questioning it. And I thought, well, when I'm work for 40 years and then I'll have 4 years income saved, that's not going to be the full picture, is it? And then I was looking at how I could grow that, basically. So how could I grow that more than 10% per year, say? And I started with index funds. So index funds are like a pool of a group of the best performing companies in a particular country, and then you you own a sliver of each of those companies as a whole, so you're diversified against all different sectors, all different companies, all different markets, and the idea is that it outperforms most of what retail investors can perform at. And
so it'd be like the S&P in
the
UK.
S&P 500. Yeah, so it's like the top 500 performing companies in the world. and you put your money into that, and it grows at 10% per year, on average over the last, since inception.
Mm-hmm.
So 10%. And then it's like, well, how can I speed that up? And then you look at, and basically the better returns that you get in investing requires more skill, more knowledge, potentially more time. And I just slowly developed those skills. So it was like, okay, what's the next thing? Well, how can I increase it to 15% per year? And it was like, well, I need to know about stocks, large cap stocks, big stocks. So big stocks that are part of that S&P 500 fund. How can I take one of those and isolate some investments into that particular company? What do I need to know? And it was like, right, I need to understand the balance sheet, the income statement, the cash flow statement, and I need to understand qualitative and quantitative analysis so that I can form a story and be confident in that particular stock. And I would learn that. And then I would, I increase my average returns up to 15, 18% per year doing that. And then there was a period of time where I needed to really control my income. I needed to grow my income at more than 10% per year. And in doing that, I started a business so I could control my income. And, that was stressful. Because I started a business to pay myself as much money as possible to become financially free. And with that comes a lot of challenge. You need staff, you can't afford the staff, and you need a new manager and you can't afford the manager. And then everyone knows that you're on your way out. So the leadership kind of goes, and there was that kind of sinking ship and that's when I went into like trading. So higher speculation stuff. I went into online poker first. And then, I spent about 6 months learning that, and then some options trading, and then I settled for like financial markets, forex markets, foreign exchange. After I blew about £40,000 learning lessons on becoming good at that, and then within a 3-year period from that point, I matched my current living costs from the whole portfolio. So I had, some passive low risk investments doing a certain return. And then I had some higher speculatives like large cap stocks and some medium cap stocks. And then they were performing even better. And I'd put a portion of money into them, and then they would be dividend yielding. And then I would look at real estate investment trust, which is a similar thing to the S&P 500, but in real estate. So in property. So you can own tiny pieces of property companies without actually buying a brick, and then I had my trading, my swing trading, and then by the time I was 29, I matched my income, my income that I needed to cover my lifestyle costs. It was actually a little bit less, but I thought if I can, radicalize my lifestyle costs for a bit, I won't have to work. So I did that. 29 years old, I was in that position, didn't need to actually go and work anymore. And and I've done that ever since, basically. And then I've just grown my income even more, because when you have free time to obviously ponder on what you want to do, you become way more creative, and you can create great things. Your head isn't in the sand thinking about emails and paying staff and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's where I am now.
Do you think anyone can do this stuff?
No, anyone can become financially free. It's just like losing weight. You burn, you burn more calories than you consume. Well, with wealth building, financial freedom, you spend less than you earn, and you invest a surplus, and you will become financially free. There's a mathematical impossibility not to, if you do those things. How quickly you can do it, and how you can do it directionally correct without having setbacks and losses and stupid mistakes, that is another thing altogether. And then not everyone can trade. Most people shouldn't go into trading. Most people, if you've got a logical mind, process oriented, you're maybe an IT engineer, military, even someone who can take orders and are very binary thinking, and they know if they do ABC, they get XYZ, and they just focus on that. They enjoy the markets. They've got half a chance at trading. Most of the people that I see can't do it. Other than those people, there's a really common theme. So anyone can become financially free. Anyone can do all of the other stuff. Trading, you need to be in that kind of archetype, if you like.
And so you do, I mean, you've got lots of content on YouTube, lots of subscribers, etc., a book, and a course that you run, and you say that most people can't do it. So what are the things that you're teaching those people on that course, and what type of people are they?
Yeah, over the years, I've developed various programs. You know, I had a Tears of Freedom program, which is like a full comprehensive wealth creation program designed to get you to financial independence in 18 months and financial freedom in 3 to 5 years. And that is everything from mindset to, you know, planning and structuring your day, structuring your personal finance, to passive investing, to semi-passive investing, to you know, to lifestyle growth, income growth. And that's a really comprehensive process. And anyone can do that, right? Anyone can do that. What people can't do is learn to trade. So we separated those two things because we knew that most people shouldn't be trading. And when you learn to trade, you're basically learning the technicals. You're learning, you know, price action and charting and technical analysis and, you know, brokers and order flow and all this kind of stuff, which is that's a skill in itself. You know, it's a bit like if you're going to go and learn skateboarding, you're going to geek out on bearings and wheels, or if you're a guitarist, you know, you're learning scales and chords and progressions and fretboards and all that kind of stuff. That's a real isolated skill that you need to be sure that you need to go and learn. So we separated those two things. But the wealth creation side, anyone can set. You know, really, it's about having wealth high on your values, because the reason most people aren't financially free is because they prioritize and value other things more. So they think they don't, but they do, because wealth is you don't manage money once you get a certain amount of money. What you do is you get a certain amount of money as a result, as a byproduct of managing your money. So it's not like if you suddenly come into this big windfall, you're going to be a master at managing your money. In fact, I work with celebrities who have been on TV. I'm working with boy bands now who literally have got nothing. And you know, you look at them, put them on a pedestal, and you think you've earned all this money. They've got nothing, you know, and they've bought no assets. They've got no income. And people can have all the money in the world, but they just won't build freedom. They won't build wealth with it unless they value that and truly value that. So really, what it's about is educating people on how to prioritize that, how to shift that up on your values by helping them see. By doing that will give you more of what you know you value, you know, and really linking the two of those things. And once people get that, then it becomes easy. And also, once they've got certainty, so I'm a certainty guy. I don't just go, oh, let's become financially free. I have numbers, I have projections, I have a date. You know, I can work out what day you'll become financially free if you do this. And that gives a lot of certainty to people, because it's such a taboo. There's so much BS out there as well. You know, it's kind of pie in the sky. But I don't do things like that. I don't know if it's because maybe I'm ADHD or something, but I just needed tools. I needed barriers. I needed like a start point and an end point, and that's how I've always done everything. There's certainty in all the numbers. It's not, oh, you know, do this and you'll earn 7 figures. I reverse engineer the 7 figures, so it's definite. And then if you do this, you'll get 7 figures. So yeah, that's how I do it anyway.
You're kind of known as the sort of investing guy. So if you look at YouTube, but it seems to me, like you say, there's this split, and it's more of like a lifestyle design. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, look, no, people say they want like to be rich, but really they just want to be free. So, you know, they don't want to do any of it. They just want a free life where they can wake up and choose what they do every day and go where they want every day, and have enough money to allow them to do whatever it is they want every day. And that's people overcomplicate that, and the reason they overcomplicate it is because usually they're in a position where they're looking at financial freedom as a way to escape the situation that they're in. But the elephant in the room is you haven't built a situation that you you want to be in. You shouldn't want to escape your life. If you want to escape, you've something's gone wrong, and it's usually because you've taken opinions, or you've subordinated to social pressures or idealisms that have just sent you off track, or you're trying to please and appease mum and dad, or to impress some ex or some old boss, and every decision that you've made has been based on someone else's thoughts a little bit as well as yours, and now you're way off track. And the key, like my book's called Always Free, it's about being free in mind, movement, and money. So when people say they want to be free, the problem is they don't know who they are or where they want to go in the first place. So if I gave them £100 million, they would probably be lost, and they wouldn't know what they're going to do, because they've never taken the time to figure out who they are, what's important to them, what they actually want to do with their life. If they did that first and they knew who they were intrinsically, then they could start thinking about how could I make my job or my vocation or my income an extension of who I am, so that whatever I do doesn't feel like work. So the sector or the niche that you go into needs to be highly correlated to something within your purpose, and then once you do that, it's about optimizing your time so that you're not like I did on the car wash, right? You're not doing all the uninspiring stuff, you're doing the inspiring stuff, and 80% of your time is spent doing that, so that at that point you don't really think about things like retirement, or I need to get away, or I need a holiday, or you just don't, so that's the most important thing. It's way easier to create that than it is to chase financial freedom and actually trying to escape quick. You're much better to try and optimize your life. The world we live in today, you can monetize anything. You can talk about anything and make money. So I was just talking to someone earlier, and they actually do coaching of some sort. But every time they speak to me about house and home, or making cakes and things like that, or looking after their home, or decorating, they come alive, and I guarantee they would be way more successful talking about that stuff than they would doing the coaching stuff. And you can make money doing that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is people seek financial freedom to escape a life that they've built inefficiently or incorrectly. Optimize that, go and fix that before you think about financial freedom, because the financial freedom element is just how much time you can buy into the future, should you need to, if you need to stop, if you have an injury, or you need to take care of a loved one. But for me, like I don't have any goals, I don't have any aspirations, and I just want to live every day like today. And I never want to stop. I want to wake up and think about things to create, and go and help people, serve people, and share stuff online. You can tell I don't stop, right? I just energized when I talk about this stuff, and I'll do that for the rest of my days. And I don't want to stop that. I don't want to retire or go and I need a holiday and all that kind of stuff. So it's I say that while I'm sitting in Ibiza, but yeah, this is just somewhere where we came because we thought, let's go there. But yeah, I think that's the answer. I want people to stop chasing financial freedom. I want them to perform their way into their ideal life, rather than like make sacrifices and kind of look at it like this struggle or grind. I don't like that. Life shouldn't be like that.
Where did you learn that approach or philosophy, in terms of, it seems to me like you're really wanting people to sort of like let go of that control element and be more relaxed in it. It doesn't seem like something that would come very natural.
I mean, over the years, I've look, I spent a long time when I didn't need to actively go and work in a job anymore, and I was free to choose how I spent my time. I spent a bit of time just networking with entrepreneurs. I went out, I had to get out the house. I was basically putting on a bit of weight and became an awesome guitarist, but it was a little bit lonely sat at home, every day. So I started networking, and over a few years that I did that, I met people who were born into wealth. They had loads of money. They had all the money. They could do whatever they want, wherever they want, go wherever they want, and yet they were like addicted to drugs. And the reason they were addicted to drugs, quite clearly to me, was because they had no sense of purpose or meaning or fulfillment. They didn't know who they were, right? So they're just unanchored, floating around, lost. So that wasn't freedom. Money wasn't freedom. And then on the other table, I'd see people who were raking money in, like entrepreneurs doing 100 grand, 300 grand a month, a million a month, 12 million business, and they had no money. And the reason they had no money is because they were great. They had built such an inefficient asset that they were on this hamster wheel where they had to keep making that, and they were stressed. So they were great at their job, but they were terrible at making money and managing money. Making money and managing money is two totally separate studies. One gives you freedom, and one, brings in your income. It's completely separate. And then finally, I'd meet people who are very spiritual, really happy in their own skin, love their job, but their job wasn't, it wasn't that rewarding. It wasn't. They didn't pay very well, and then they weren't free because they had had these kind of midlife crises. They weren't having the experiential freedom that they wanted because they were limited that way. So freedom to me wasn't about just being mentally free. It wasn't about just money, and it wasn't just about your laptop lifestyle or mobility or being able to, control things and be a great entrepreneur. It wasn't about that. It was about having all of it. And that to me is why I wrote Always Free, because you can actually take each three of those things. You can target and almost analyze where you're at in each of those now by asking some questions. And then there's strategies to tangibly grow each of those and enhance each of those until the overall feeling of freedom increases. So Always Free, the feeling. And I wanted to make that tangible. And the way that you make that tangible is you focus on enhancing each of those freedoms. Lockdown was a great example when everyone just got locked inside their house, and arguably we were less free, but everyone felt freer. And the reason they felt freer is because, one, they had this mindset shift that they could do what they do now to make the money they make now from anywhere in the world, even though it was just their house. But they had this, it was like a mindset shift that, wow, I don't need to go to an office anymore. And the more mobile you feel, the more free you feel. So mobility freedom. And then, you could prioritize your day in order and what you wanted to do first. And then, no one was looking over your shoulder, and people felt freer because of that. And then they rationalized their living costs because there was no keeping up with the Joneses. You couldn't even go out and show off your second car, your handbag or whatever. So people became really aware of what it was they needed to be happy. And it was a lot less. And that was a real taste for what freedom actually is, believe it or not. And that's a prime example of, it's not just about money, and it's not just about, running an amazing business that looks amazing on the outside, or it's not just about having a strong mindset. It's actually a series of things that makes you feel freer, and it's a lot closer within reach than people overcomplicate and make out.
Mm. I think a big garden was useful in COVID.
A big garden was useful,
one thing,
yes. Of course.
One thing I wish I had.
Right, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because you'd see my dad or whatever, and they're just loving life. I mean, actually, I had a struggling business in hospitality at the time. It was, I had a business in hospitality that was shut down because of COVID, and then I got a part-time job selling insurance to try and make ends meet. Guess what I was selling? I was cold calling hospitality businesses, selling them insurance.
Right.
And they go, "Mate, I'm closed." And I go, "Yeah, I know. I've got a hospitality business too." It was like the cruelest fucking thing. But I'm with you. It definitely was. I think, I guess a paradigm shift, wasn't it, into like how differently we can operate, and many people started podcasts and stuff as a result. There's a huge boom, wasn't there?
Yeah, for sure. I think, but yeah, it just opened people's eyes to what really mattered, I think, and it was a breathing space to reevaluate what was important to you. And I think if we just make more of a conscious effort to do that regularly, have a COVID effect or a lockdown effect. I think that's a good thing to practice. Do that regularly, because you find yourself slipping away. I always think about when you were 7 years old. You was probably out on your bike or on your skateboard or having an ice cream with your friends or whatever it was, right? And you had all the freedom in the world. You didn't see it back then, of course, because when your parents used to say, "All right, come in now, you've got to have a shower, go to bed, ready for school," whatever, you used to think, when I'm an adult, I'm going to be, no one's going to tell me what to do. I'm going to be freer than ever. And then as you watch adults become adults, they get less free. And they move further and further away from that 7-year-old child who had the inspiration, innocence, who knew, they had this intrinsic being. And there was a time when in 2012, we went to Disney. And as we went to the ticket barrier, this old guy who worked at Disney, must have been like 80 years old, he stamped our ticket and he went, "Go and be a kid again." And I remember looking at everyone run through the gates, everyone big smiles on their face. And I just remember thinking, that's all people want. They just want to be 7. They just want to be back to that freedom that they already had, and they've just built a life that doesn't give them what they already had. And it's just, it's like, what an eye opener. We build these lives based on what we think or what we are told to do. And what we're not doing is taking advice from people and aligning it with who we truly are and what we want in life. Someone who telling you to do something might not have the life that you want or even have the results that you want in something. And it means nothing to you, but you're just playing along, going along, doing the sales funnel, the tripwire, the whatever it is, the email marketing and social media and all this kind of stuff. Why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? That's the important thing. And I think everyone is trying, or the majority of people try and create live. They're lost. They're creating a life just going with a flow, and they don't actually want that. I see at the moment, there's a big movement with independent women and all this kind of stuff, right? And my wife's there like, women are shooting themselves in the foot, because I love tradition and I want a man to be able to do things for me and I'm okay with that, right? But now it's like we're in too deep and we've got to kind of go with the narrative that women are can do whatever. Yes, of course women can be independent. Of course they can do what they want. But, sometimes you realize that you're doing something for the sake of doing it rather than actually understanding what's important to you and being true to that. And I think that's what you see in the world everywhere.
Yeah, I think there's a blog post somewhere and it's like, what do you want to want? And it's
what
like,
do you want to want? Yeah,
like really figuring out exactly what you're talking about, where when you start to break it down, you're like, yeah, why am I doing this? Oh, because I want money. What? Why? Because I want freedom. Okay, what does that look like? And then, if you're anything like me, you're probably good at starting habits, but fail to stick to them over the long term. There's probably 1 or 2, whether that be going to the gym or taking the dog for a walk, but struggle to maintain others around career, relationship, or life goals. If you're a long-term listener of the podcast, this won't be the first time you've heard me talk about habits and leveraging public accountability. That's why I created Indiip, the tool that helps you build healthy habits and stick to them. After creating your free account, you'll be given your own personal public profile link, which you can share with your friends, your family, coach, or followers. And when someone clicks that link, you'll be given a real-time notification that someone is watching your habits. I can't tell you how much of a motivator it is when you're stuck in a procrastination cycle and this little eyeball pops up with a number next to it. My productivity has gone through the roof since I started using it. It's that effective. Luckily for you, I'm giving away 100 free VIP months to my podcast listeners. There's no credit card required. Head to indiip.com/podcast. That's deep with 2 I's, indiip.com/podcast, or follow the links in the episode description below. Let's start crushing our habits today. Why do you think, especially in the UK, or I mean, I presume you speak to clients around the world, so I wonder your perspective on this. What about different societies and that relationship to money? Where does that come from, this kind of unease, dis-ease, angst very strange relationship with money.
Yeah, I guess going back to what I said earlier, I think your values are shaped by your perceived voids, and a lot of that stuff that you carry around with you through life comes from your beliefs that you or events that have happened that you've labeled negatively as a kid, like your parents arguing over money, or someone telling you that money was the root of all evil and it doesn't grow on trees and all that kind of stuff, or we can't afford this, we can't afford that, or that's a rip-off, that's a rip-off. That kind of language can lead you to have deep set beliefs that that is what money is, when in actual fact money is the fairest game in town. It was literally created for fairness, and it's one of the fairest things in the world. And I try to explain to people that, back in the day before money was invented, if there would be naturally people learning things to serve other people, to pull their weight in the community. And, if I had tore my shirt, I could say to someone, "Oh, look, you've spent, years learning how to sew up shirts. Can you sew my shirt up?" And then I can say, and then they might say to me, "Oh yeah, you know, I'll do that for you because you spent 10 years learning open heart surgery. So when my mum has needs heart surgery, you can do that." And you kind of get to this point where it's not quite a fairness. Sewing up a shirt and performing open heart surgery isn't quite a fair exchange, and there's always going to be people who want to work harder than others and provide more value than others. So you have to have a way of gauging that in fairness. And that's where money came in. It was like, right, this is the fairness measurement, and you can have as much of it as you like. You just have to provide value to each other. And that was it. I think it's much easier to ignore that and think, oh, money's bad. Rich people are greedy and all that kind of stuff. But in actual fact, the richest people in the world have served millions and millions of people, and you can't show me a billionaire who hasn't served millions of people. So it's looking at money a different way and seeing it for what it is, and not holding on. Or if it was a divorce, if it was a bad argument or whatever, what were the benefits that came out of that? Because you saw it as a bad event, but actually it was just an event, and there'll be equal upsides to that event happening. So, did you get 2 Christmases, 2 birthdays? Did you get like 2 holidays a year with each parent? Or, did they meet partners who now you've got 2 mums and 2 dads and, all that kind of stuff. So you can start seeing the benefits, and if you keep looking for those benefits, you'll see how that's all the benefits that you've had in your life as a result of that event taking place, the lessons learned, the money that was saved as a result of being more careful, being more cautious. There's tons and tons of lessons there. You just have to dig and find them until that event that you labeled negatively is now just an event. It was just something that happened, and there was equal upsides and downsides. And if you can do that, you can clear away all that stuff in your past that's stopping you from going to make as much money as you possibly can.
Interesting. It's funny because I've always thought of myself as like pretty good relationship with money, and then just lately I'm kind of like re-examining it a little bit and kind of uncovering some stuff, and I'm like, actually maybe I've got like a terrible relationship with money. And I was thinking about, then I couldn't help reflect when you said about upbringing. I'm kind of, and I've got like mother's side, working class Irish immigrants, gypsies, dad's side, and I just did my ancestry recently as well, so I've gone back really far.
Oh, right. Cool.
Fascinating. And dad's side ends up going to like Swedish aristocracy, very conservative, with money and stuff, and it's like, but then divorced, right? So then we have 2 conflicting sides of the coin, no pun intended. That was where you have two totally different value sets. And I guess I suppose when your parents are together as well, it probably merges those things. So you have a little bit more cohesiveness as to, okay, this is how we manage money, this is how we think about it. But when you've kind of got, no, we're liberal, we do this, we give all our money away, we'll kind of like skint forever. And then we've got the other side, which is like, we're conservative, we hold on to it, we save, we invest. Yeah,
there's a good balance there though, because you need both of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm out here on my anniversary after 16 years, 22 years together, and we're complete opposites. You know, I'm not a believer in power couples. I think a power couple is a couple that is opposite, and you support the weaknesses of the other person so that you've got this solid relationship. You know, and it's very hard for me not to believe that now because, as I say, I've been with we've got a phenomenal relationship, phenomenal marriage, and you know we've been together so long now that it's just as great. It's much better today than it was then, and it's because she has no interest in money. In fact, she has negative. If I say something about going to make some money or do something, she'll go, "Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that?" And what a lot of people would do is they go, "Oh, you know, I'm going to break up my wife because she's negative towards my dream. She's holding me back." Actually, I appreciate it because she's making me see things or question things to ground me. You know, when I get a little bit excited about something, and at the same time, if I'm having if I've had times in life, she'll pull me up. She'll be like, "No, you're not as bad as you're making out. You know, you're great. You'll be all right." And she looks after the home and the house. She's empathetic and she loves animals and she loves the kids and she has conversations with our kids that I feel uncomfortable having. And she's made me more comfortable having those conversations. And I've made her more sensible about money and raise her standards around living. And, you know, it's just a great combination. So I think there's merit for that. You know, I think it's great. Good and bad, yin and yang, you know.
Are you familiar with Dr. Robert Glover by any
Robert
chance?
Glover? No, it doesn't ring any bells.
Yeah, he's like a huge author, and he came on the show once, and he talked about polarity being so important in relationships, and that's kind of what you're tapping into there, like the yin yang. You need both, because if you're both charging towards the same thing, it's kind of like there's no balance there, is there?
That's it. Polarity is there's a book called The Kabbalion, which I recommend everyone reads, and it's, you know, the seven laws of the universe, and polarity is one of them. You know, you can't. There are polar opposites to everything, and you know, balance is in the middle. So important.
Yeah. Do you think you're motivated by money still?
I don't think I was ever motivated by money, but what I was motivated to do is create security, and money is a big player in that, because the more of it I purely see money as time. So I don't see time as money, because everyone used to say time is money. I think that's a big trap you can fall into. If you think time's money, you're going to be very frustrated, because there's only a certain amount of hours in the day, right? So you charge £45 an hour, well, you're going to be burned out pretty quick trying to acclimatize to the lifestyle you want and make that money every day, and you'll be trapped. So for me, it's about how much time money can buy me into the future. So I look at my living costs and living costs of a life that I truly want and love, not buying the Ferrari because someone else likes Ferraris, or being a slave to someone else who wears flash watches or whatever, making sure that I've got what I want, working out what that costs, and then seeing money as how much of that can I buy? You know, how many years, how many months, how many decades can I buy based on the amount of capital that I've got and how I've got it working for me, so that it doesn't disintegrate and die. And that to me is looking at money as time, as a security. And that's basically how I see it. I see making money, putting it into a security, and then making that thing work so that it can buy as much time as possible.
You got many testimonials on your website. What are some of your most memorable sort of transformations?
Well, I mean, 4 people, I think. I mean, there's been so many. I mean, people have had tattoos of my logo
Really?
on them. Yeah, yeah. So I think transformations, people just people just stepping into their own life of what you know, that is the biggest transformation for me, because once they understand that they can live a life that's important to them, they let go of all of the ego, the pressures. You literally see a weight come off their shoulders.
What's that like look like practically? Can you give me an example of what situation they're in, and then how they're able to sort of break free
Oh, I mean,
spiritually?
it can literally, I mean, it can simply be, so a couple of things. It could literally be as basic level as um, going through your expenses, you know, and looking at what you're spending because you think you should or isn't really valuable to you, you know, or just, you know, say, coming from a place where you say, "Oh, I can't afford to invest or save," and you go through your expenses and you find 10% saving there that you can actually start putting into investments and start building wealth. You know, there's that side of things, and then there's the side of them figuring out who they are, and that just can come as simply as, you know, asking, like, if I was to ring your friend and ask them who you're the go-to person for. Like, what are you the go-to person for? What do you always bring up in conversation? What are you known for? You know, what would they ring you for advice on? What would they, what, if I spoke to them, what would they say? Oh, he's always talking about this, you know, and there'll be a common theme there if I ask all your friends that question. Um, if I said, if you don't need money, you know, if I gave you 10 million or 100 million on Monday, what would be the first thing you would do? That would, again, there'd be a close correlation there. Simply going through your camera roll on your phone over all the years, you know, take out all the selfies or whatever, but there'll be a common theme of what you choose to take photos of, what inspires you. It might be football, it might be the mountains, might be animals, might be the kids or whatever, but there'll be a common theme there. And if you can start piecing together those clues, you can start to formalize what you're here to do, you know, what you really are here to do. And when you know that and understand that, and then you can look at all the past events that are holding you back, things that you've labeled negatively, things that you've seen that have affected you negatively, and you can start dissolving all of that. You start becoming so much freer. You know, it's like one of them was like 20, you know, partner walked in, your partner cheating on you, right? And at that moment in time, it's the worst thing in the world that happened to you, right? And then you, after that event, you have a fear of going out, dating, you don't trust people. And then I bump into you 20 years later and I say, was that a bad thing that happened back then? Was it the worst thing in the world that happened back then? And you say, no, it's the absolute best thing that could have happened, right? Because if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have met this person, had these kids and traveled this place and that place and had this life, right? So it was the same thing, but in your head, it went from the worst thing in the world to the best thing in the world. So imagine if you didn't take 20 years to see that lesson. Imagine if you just saw the lesson instantly. Imagine if you could see the good and the bad and the bad and the good instantly. You know, that's really empowerment for me. That's what true empowerment is. And I get there's a need to grieve and to experience loss and to have those emotions as lessons, but it 20 years is it's an inefficiency. And I think people feel such a sense of relief when they can see past events for what they were. It helps them, it stops whatever that was holding them back from going after what they truly want. And that's the key. You know, it's nothing to do with money, nothing to do with anything else, really. It's just freedom in your mind.
Mm. Yeah, that's fascinating. What which clients don't work out?
Yeah, which clients don't work out? See, I don't really work like particularly with clients. I run some educational programs and stuff. I don't do too much one-on-one. So I don't, you know, there's probably a handful of people that I work with one-on-one, and clients that don't work out, people that well, in trading, it's easy. So if you want to be a trader, you need to have a logical mind, right? So if you're away with the fairies, or you're you think you can blow the screen and it'll move, those types of people, they're not cut out for trading, right? So they should not do trading, or not try their hand at it whatsoever. So trading aside, other people who don't work out are people that just it's really difficult, and it's nothing to do with them. It's probably me saying, I can't work with you anymore. I can't bother, because it is, you tell them to do something and they agree with you, but they do the opposite, or they do something completely opposite. And after a while, there's only so many times you can really, you can exhaust your knowledge, you can exhaust your expertise or your experience or whatever, and they're still not doing it. After that, you have to kind of say, well, I don't think I can help you, And there's a couple of people that have done that over the years, but
closed-mindedness. Do you think?
I think it is, and if you really dig down, if I really went for it, I could probably help them, but I'm not willing to, I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to sacrifice my time to do that. So, I call them ask holes. They ask you something and you give them the answer and they do the opposite, and don't be an ask hole. That's what I'd say.
So I want to give you an example. Let's say someone's listening now and they're kind of like, they were thinking about some of the reflections that you offered us. They're like, Mary's always talking about painting. She loves to paint, but she works at Tesco's. She's got 2 kids. She's run off her feet. She feels trapped in this life. It's all right for you to say that,
Mm-hmm.
Like, how am I supposed to make a living doing painting? What are the sort of steps that someone in that situation can take?
Yeah, I mean, be clear about. So, as I said at the beginning, most people don't know who they are or what they want. So, I think just take some time to figure out who you are and what is important to you. What would you love to do every day? I know people ask this question, right? And they just kind of think about it and they think, oh, I can't really think about it. I don't know. I don't know what I would do. Yeah. But you can't just do it once. I have thinking time in my calendar every day. The first thing I do is get up in the morning and just sit for an hour thinking about stuff. And I don't think, maybe it's because I grew up in the 80s, 90s where we were bored as fuck, mate. We'd sit in my room all day and I would have to just be bored, and there's a lot to be said for that, because thinking and being bored and pondering on stuff is so important. And I don't think we get enough time to do that these days. So, what do you truly want? Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. And then you just go back, social media, thing, and it's like, no, spend an hour, spend an hour a day, spend half hour a day, spend 20 minutes a day, whatever it is, just thinking on that question, and you will find the answers. You will really find the answers. Ask your friends what they think you are the person for, and if you do that, you'll feel this energy, because you'll get excited, you'll get inspired that you've tapped into something that was already inside you, but it feels like, yeah, I could, that's who I am. And once you start getting that, you can start looking around the environment for people who are making money doing that, or making money speaking about that, or, building a life around that. And then you start asking different questions. You start seeing different things in the environment instead of, why is this happening to me? You start looking for where you can see it in the world, and it's a completely different perspective. You see things that you didn't see before, and you'll meet people and you'll hear things and you'll have ideas that you didn't have before, because you're giving yourself permission to focus on you as a person. Give yourself more you time. That's probably the best advice that I could give. Proper you time, not sitting in a flipping sauna on your phone, or in a jacuzzi on your phone doing Instagram stories. Get rid of all of that and go and sit somewhere, and with a notepad. Sounds so simple, and it almost sounds alien today, especially if you've got younger viewers. But that is what will save your life potentially. I'm telling you.
Yeah, stillness. Ryan Holiday wrote a book, Stillness is the Key, which is that sort of thing. A few weeks ago, I remember I was just I was doing a solo podcast and I was like, I want nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stare at that wall for an hour, cross-legged. I'm just going to see what comes up. And it was like, do you know what? It was like have you heard of High Rocks?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I do High Rocks. Everyone
Oh,
knows that. I listen to this. And I was like, that 60 minutes was probably as much as an endurance event than a High Rocks, like not moving at all and just fucking looking, eyes open, trippy. Like, if you've ever done an eyes open meditation, quite trippy.
I haven't, but I've done like a silence
Yeah. Have you done
retreat.
like like any of those retreats?
I haven't done like a 10-day, but I did a 12-hour, which
Nice.
was, I mean, that was mad. 12
Yeah.
hours silent. It's crazy.
And it is like fascinating to see what comes up. And yeah, I remember at the end of that, it was just kind of like, I want to help people.
Exactly.
That's what kind of arose.
It's noisier than not being silent. That's how I found it. It was like so much by the end of it was kind of like when you get feedback on a microphone and it starts feeding back, and by the end of the day it's loud in your brain, and it's like you just can't wait to start writing stuff down and start implementing what's come to mind. Crazy.
Yeah. No, I'm a huge advocate for meditation and reflection. One of the things I wanted to ask you was your actual sales operation, funnel, flywheel, content system is pretty impressive. There's a lot on there. There's a lot of output.
Yep.
How are you managing all that?
Yeah. So the way that I've built businesses is through not creating a job or a business for myself to be a slave to again. I basically came out and started sharing stuff online for free because I thought it was valuable. And as a result of doing that, I've had lots of people over the years going, can you teach me more? Can you do this? Can you do that? So we've put together programs and customer journeys that help them get an outcome, but in a way that doesn't sacrifice, my time or my freedom, because that would be incongruent, first of all. But second of all, I don't want to do that, right? So the way that we've created businesses is we've given everything away for free online. So I teach, I've got 3-hour YouTube video tutorials and 2.5 hour YouTube tutorials, and I share everything. And what we realized is the more people spend time with you, the more they want to pay you because the more they trust you, right? So instead of creating a business where we put out loads of social media, the what and the why, but not the how, we just give everything away. And as a result in doing that, we get people drawn to us because they believe, because basically you lower the barrier, which means you don't need salespeople. We've never placed an advert ever. We've never had, I don't have any salespeople or anything like that. So what you want to build is like, do you remember the Lemmings, the computer game? I don't know if you might be a bit younger than me, but they used to drop in from the sky, and you used to basically just have to build this nice ramp, smooth ramp with no obstacles, so that they could get to the exit. So the way that I built a business was, well, let's just give everything away for free. And then if they do want to pay, then they can have this very low cost thing that they get so much value from because they're getting even more value. And then they sell themselves on the next thing, which is a little bit more expensive, and then a little bit more expensive, and then a membership. And in doing that, and building the back end so that they've got that customer journey, which requires no team, they get so much value that they sell themselves on it, and they are raving fans by the end of it. So we, instead of trying to sell this high ticket thing, which I think is where a lot of they give bits away online, and then they go, right, we'll teach you how, and then they spend money on sales teams to like try and lift them over this big fence and spend this and make decisions and talk to the decision makers and all that kind of stuff. And for me, it's just like, well, if you want 20 grand for your service, why don't you just split it over a ramp that is 15 products? And the first product's 50 quid. And the second product's 300 quid. And the next product's 800 quid. and the next product's 1,000, and the next product's 2,000, next product's 5,000. And you've got this product ecosystem that they're just naturally becoming more and more of a raving fan, that they just want to be like the top person in your thing. They're not going to look anywhere else. They just sell themselves on the thing. And that's exactly what we did. That's exactly what we did. We just built these efficient journeys for them to get out, like outcome focused, so that they get the outcomes that they want. And we just the we give everything away on YouTube, and then they just watch that, get so much value, and they drop in the thing.
Do you think it's more about connection and community than the actual learning almost? Like, because like you say, if you're giving away everything on YouTube, technically someone could put it all together themselves probably, but it's like they get more from the community and getting closer to you, so they just they end up I guess what, almost like an evangelist, or just like, I'm just so bought into it literally and spiritually that that's the only direction it would go.
Look, everything, like ChatGPT is much better at creating financial freedom than me. You know, ChatGPT is a much better investor than me, and a trader, and much better everything than me. But so if all the information is there anyway, why are you hiding information? Like, just share it, just give it away, because you're going to drop the barrier when people believe that you're the person that can help them, and they trust you because you've had the experiences, and all they want is implementation. They want you to help implement, because that's why people don't do it. That's why people have fitness coaches and personal trainers.
The reason you're paying for the fitness trainer is because you just won't actually do the work. So what you realize, people just want to pay for, like, no one wants to learn anything. They just want the outcome. They want the result. So if you can, if they believe that by working with you will help them quickly implement a result because of accountability, you know, maybe a community, maybe just you sense checking their ideas and going, yes, do this, don't do this, you know, and checking their homework kind of thing, that is enough. And that's what they'll pay for. So all you need to do is show them that you're the one that they can trust. And you do that by not hiding anything on social media. You just give everything away because they're going to find it anyway.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Like you say, where now knowledge used to be so valuable. Obviously, it is valuable, but it used to be so much more prized. And now, like you say, GPT can pretty much beat everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a good thing to deploy. How do you feel about AI? Have you got any thoughts about how this is all going to play out?
Oh God, I mean, that's a massive podcast in itself, but yeah, I love it. And as long as you're embracing it and you're using it conducively to who you want to be or what you want to do, you know, I don't think people are saying, "Oh, jobs are becoming obsolete." Well, they're not. If you make your team, or you are on top of AI, you can actually become a very, very valuable person. I'll give an example. Like, we were paying a coder to code some tools for us, about 60 grand a year. And it would take probably, you know, a year to develop a really, really good platform or a good tool that we wanted to use. And that'd be a 60 grand tool, right? Now we've got AI vibe coding and Replit and things like that, where you can create tools. But he doesn't work for us anymore. But what you could really do with is him basically building those things in Replit, because now you're just like cooking on gas.
100x, yeah.
Right. But you know, whereas I don't want to sit there and talk to Replit and do vibe coding all day, right? But he could do it, and he'd understand what it's doing, and he can almost, it's like gremlins, like multiply yourself, like, and you can scale really quickly if you adopt it. So every person, even social media, they say, oh, you don't need a video editor anymore. You can just do it yourself on AI. Well, I don't want to do that. You know, I've still got to go and do. So I'm creating another job for myself, basically, by getting rid of that person. How about they learn how to do it, and then we can do more videos, you know, and they can do more of my videos. And I think people just look at it a bit negatively, but it's actually incredible. You know, it's phenomenal what you can do with it if you're using it the right way.
Yeah, I think even if even if it does go that way and people start to, you know, sack people or whatever and start to use everything through AI, I wonder if you'll end up with just like a bit of a boomerang where people go, oh shit, but like I've got no team around me. All I'm doing is talking to AIs all day. There's no collaboration with real humans. It kind of comes back to what we were saying before, where, you know, we want connection and we want to be part of a community.
Yeah. I do think that there'll be like lots of 3-person teams creating multiple businesses and products at once. So I think that's probably what we'll see more of. I know a lot of entrepreneurs who are now, because of AI, they've got a great team of like 3 people, and they're now, because they've got free time, because AI saves a lot of their time, they can now create multiple businesses. So I'm seeing that a lot.
Yeah. So you mentioned you didn't have any goals. What are you excited about? Is there anything you got on the horizon?
I did. Obviously, I did have goals, right? But I don't have goals now. So when I say I don't have goals, I'm not striving for anything. I'm not like, you know, I've achieved everything I want, and if I could just live every day like this, it'd be amazing. And I've really just got a mission now, and that's to share stuff like this, share my views, share my thoughts, share what I think's important. That's why I wrote my book, and obviously, I wrote the book, and then that went to #1 international bestseller in 7 countries, 4 different 7 categories, 4 countries, and that was a milestone ticked off, but not because I was striving to do it. It was just as a result of launching a book, right? And now that book has I've just been invited to Necker Island with Richard Branson for a week next month, and that is a result. It's not because I'm striving to do it, but it's just a result of a natural progression of sharing my mission and being on this mission. So I'm excited for what the future will bring, but I'll just let it, you know, I'll let it come.
Wow. Richard Branson. So come on, we can't just skim over that. So how did that happen?
So I wrote a book, launched a book. Daniel Priestley is a great friend of mine. He's been recently on a lot of like Diary of CEO. I think he's been on like 6 times. And he's
always on there.
Right. Yeah. So he Noah, who's Richard's nephew, reached out to him and said, you know, I'd love you to come. Do you know any kind of, I think the words were like, bring your most kind of impactful entrepreneurs in your group. And Dan rang me and he was like, I'd love you to come. So he invited me. So yeah, we're going out. There's 20 of us going out on the 6th of October, and who knows what that will bring, you know, another load of opportunities that are going to be incredible, no doubt.
That's amazing. We'll start to wrap things up now. Thank you for this.
Oh, thanks for having me. Been great.
If I could give you 60 seconds, a 60-second clip, let's say, to push out to everyone out there in the world who's looking for a better life, what would you tell them?
I would say stop looking up to people. I would say everything's half true. And I would say that the most important thing you can do is figure out who you are as a person and what you want in this life, wherever you're at, whether you're middle-aged or 20 or 50 or whatever. Whatever's happened to you up till now is great. Are you where you want to be? You know, are you content? And what does content look like for you? And once you figure out what that is, then you need to get motivated in moving more into doing the things that you enjoy and managing your money in a way that buys you time freedom, and just have that on your conscious awareness, because so many people now are going through the motions of doing what they think they should be doing, and they're losing sight of what is really important to them. And for a lot of people, it's just a time to be a bit selfish and just go, look, I've listened to people all my life. Now I'm going to stop listening and I'm going to flip and do what I want to do. And when you can start doing that, you'll feel freer. You'll feel better. You'll be who you want to be. And when you're doing things that are meaningful to you, you become a better human. You come from a place of love, care, service. You become more, calm, poised. You can see clearly. You become a person of reason, and you give out a completely different energy. So start consciously thinking about that. That's what I would say.
Beautiful. And do you have any tips on finding the courage to do that?
Courage, yeah. So a lot of people ask me this, actually, and I think you get courage and confidence through congruency. So imagine, like, the people that struggle and get imposter syndrome and have fears and doubts and all this kind of stuff, a lot of it is because they're not being themselves. So imagine you had a camera in your house and it was live streaming on all the social media platforms 24/7, right? Are there things, aside from intimate, private things, are there things that you wouldn't want the world to see? In other words, are you saying one thing behind closed doors and doing another? Are you talking about someone? Are you talking about your staff in a horrible way? Are you not quite doing what you say you do online, right? And if the answer is no, I wouldn't feel comfortable, then there's a lack of congruency. There's a lack of congruency there. And that is why you've got fear. That's why you've got this resistance in sharing stuff. That's why you've got imposter syndrome. That's why you've got a fear, right? If you're talking about all the stuff that you love, if my wife was to talk about animals and insects and birds all day, she would have all the confidence in the world because she loves it. She is it. She lives and breathes it. So you lose all the fear and you boost confidence, and you become more congruent, which means in turn you give out a different energy, and you just don't care because there's no one can tell me, like, no hater in a comment can tell me I'm stupid with money, or what. I just won't see that. It doesn't matter. It's not in my environment. It doesn't matter to me. Whereas if you're lying about something, or if you're incongruent about something and someone says something, you're going to go, oh, that hurt. All haters hurt because it's true, whatever they say. That's why it hurts. If it wasn't true, it wouldn't hurt. So there's a lot to be said for listening out to that mechanism in you that gets triggered, and congruency is the way. So it all goes back to being who you want to be. When you are who you say you are and do what you want to do, you've got all the confidence in the world.
Yeah, that's cool, mate. There's been a few nice little prompts and reflections and stuff, and I like that one at the end, the big brother fucking camera. Yeah, wanking all day. Sorry, elephant in the room. Thank you so much. Where should people go if they want to check out more about your work and what you do?
Yeah, if you've enjoyed anything I've said, I'd just recommend you go to alwaysfree.com. That's where you can go and listen to my podcast, which is called Always Free. And if you start episode 1, you'll get the most value listening to it in order, even if it's the first 10, 20 episodes.
Love it. And I'll link everything up in the show notes so people can check that out in their own time.
Awesome.
Thank you, mate. This has been fun. Appreciate your time. It's been fascinating hearing your story, and I do really sort of admire the attitude that you have around this stuff, and it's certainly energizing, and just listening to you talk about this stuff. So thank you.
Thanks very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Hey guys, it's me. Just a quick one before you get going. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. Don't forget, you can check out links to my guests via the episode description below. And a reminder to claim your free VIP pass month at Indiip. Go to indiip.com/podcast. That's indiip.com/podcast. If you're looking to improve your life and build habits, I really think you're going to love this tool. All links are in the episode description. Thanks for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.